Hi, Matt Chatskin for Warrior Logistician, and in this video I want to talk about my trip this past week to the Army Operations Research Symposium, the 55th. So they've been doing this for a while. The Army Operations Research Community, FA 49, is a very small community, and they get together once a year to share research that they've done, present some awards, recognize some people. So the question is, you probably have, is why are you there? I'm a functional area 90 multifunctional logistician in the Army. So what were you doing there? Well, I found out about the conference from a friend, and early on put in a request to do my presentation, because the second and third days are all presentations. And it's almost like not a round robin, but a grab bag. There's 6 rooms, there's 6 topic areas. Sustainment happened to be one of the topic areas. And there's presentations scheduled, and you just go to whatever presentation you feel like going to. You don't have to stay in one room the whole time. So I caught a couple presentations, and then I went to do mine, and I caught the one before mine, which was a Canadian PhD talking about methods they had used to optimize their network for regional logistics hubs. And after he finished, some people left, some people came in. So, and I didn't know really, I literally did not know anyone in the room. I didn't know anybody's background. So that was kind of interesting. But some major thoughts that I have had, some of which I've already talked about on Warrior Logistician, but I just want to kind of recapture and visually depict them today. So the first thought is this lack of integration between the operations research world and the logistics and supply chain world in the Army. Right now, we kind of have these worlds as being very separate. And you've heard me talk about before in other videos how at Fort Lee literally, if you've been there, you know that Army Logistics University is in a building that kind of looks like this, and then you have the ORSA among some other courses in an old building where the quartermaster school used to be. It's known as ALMAC, Army Logistics Management College, I believe. And in between, you've got this courtyard, but it's almost like these are on different planets. And some people may not have a problem with that. Obviously, there's a reason for that. Where I have a problem with it is that over here during the captain's career course, for example, you've got some training, and I don't know if we're still using the logistics estimate worksheet. And then CASCOM down the road has got a thing called OPLOG Planner. And these are methods of, I guess, developing logistics estimates for exercises that were probably okay before we had better means of doing them. They're a spreadsheet, so you get to see a bunch of numbers, and like I've always said, you don't want to go show a maneuver person a bunch of numbers in terms of your visualization of how you're going to support their plan, because that's just not going to work. That's not what they want to see. At the same time, over here, we are, at least in the basic course for ORSAs, we're using programs like Arena and other mid to high end programs that essentially do what's called discrete event simulation. And the notable difference off the top between these capabilities here and these capabilities here is that this is a visual depiction of operations. You can make assembly lines, you can have trucks move, you can have conveyor belts and people and those types of things. But you can also enter the parameters that govern how those operations work. So you can take all this information that you have here, but then take it a couple steps higher at a minimum, just in visually depicting it, but then also having the sophistication of getting beyond just kind of basic planning factors here and putting some variability into them, which in my opinion is one of the leading reasons non-modeling and simulation types have a problem, and maybe it's why these two worlds have remained separate, is because they're not comfortable with things being, or at least appearing, deterministic or matter of fact. And my answer to that is they don't have to be. We can induce as much variability as we want to in these and higher end programs. So let's talk some more about this. So you've got that our current set is that these worlds are largely separate. We don't have a dual track, so we don't have a dual track for FA90, and conversely, we don't have a dual track for FA49. That was part of the discussion at the conference. What happened? We used to have dual tracks in the Army. We no longer have those. We have functional areas, and that's what you do. Within ORSA, kind of like in logistics, in logistics you could be heavy, you could be light, you could be aviation, you could be ammunition. We tend to encourage people not to specialize. And so within FA90, we generally stay general. And the discussion on the ORSA side was, should they generalize or go into specific areas? So within ORSA, you have things like wargaming, which is kind of interesting. You have optimization, which is very akin to logistics and supply chain operations, and you have some other kind of focus areas. So you have testing is another kind of area. So let's talk about things. Let me demonstrate my point. So you saw how it's separate worlds. When the truth is that when we move away from the military for a second in our current set, let's talk about really how things have evolved within the disciplines. And the point is that operations management has been around since the 1700s, even before spreadsheets. And supply chain management really has been an application of operations management. And supply chain management historically has only been around since like the late 1980s. Again, this is kind of a core, there's some core functions going on here, and then here are the application of those core functions. And the core functions up here are things like statistics, another specialization within operations management, optimization, process flow, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see that supply chain management is just one application. You have other sorts of applications that come off of those core competencies. So another way of thinking about it is asking the question of what is a logistics engineer? Is there such a thing? And I think that, sure, isn't that kind of what we would all want to be with an FA-90? And are we logistics engineers? Where are we not logistics engineers because we haven't been exposed or trained or seasoned in an engineering way of thinking? And of course, probably another quick counter to this, I think, is that, well, there's too much complexity in tactical kind of operations, and so, you can't engineer tactical operations. You kind of have to design them. It's more of an art than a science, and so based on that, these sorts of things don't apply. And I just think that is a very limited view of looking at things. And so, if you take that kind of logic, then you get that these worlds are separate and remain separate, like I showed on the earlier sketch. And to me, that just doesn't make much sense. So what do we do with all this? Some big ideas are that we have dual tracks. So you have an FA-49 and an FA-90. Now, why couldn't infantry have a dual track? I'm not saying they couldn't. I'm not saying that artillery couldn't. I would actually make the case that artillery probably has a better case than infantry, because with artillery, you're looking at a lot of kind of ORSA-type problems, round mix, measures of effectiveness on a target. These are the kind of things that ORSAs do within testing kind of assignments. One could make the case, why can't you have a dual track with signaleers? Because building networks and evaluating networks could be argued as very like ORSA-type process flows and optimization. So it's not that I would argue with those and say that FA-90 is the only one that should have a dual track. But I think this kind of idea, formal or informal, would bring those two worlds closer together. And I'm not saying, and that's just my point, I'm not saying the worlds are the same. You want to leave some room out here within the FA-90 world to just, and not that the ORSAs don't think about this, they actually do quite a bit, but think about things that cannot be measured. Think about variability that really can't be described at all. The last thing I will say is the phrase, so first I said, man, what we got to do, and kind of what I felt like at the symposium, because I don't know, I kind of got the feeling that I definitely got the feeling I was in the minority, and that's okay. And what I mean there is that I was a non-FA-49 in a very FA-49 centered discussion event, and that's okay. I mean, I'm the one who got myself there. But so I kind of thought about, yeah, we need to infiltrate this community, and then I said, no, that's not the word. That's not the word at all. We need to integrate with this community. So my phrase for the week was integrate, not infiltrate. And as a logistician, a warrior logistician, I've always believed that we should aspire and endeavor to integrate with whoever we're supporting or working with, and even those that we're not. In fact, not only should we, I would assert that our success is based on how well we integrate. That is our job. A non-integrated logistician is an irrelevant logistician and potentially a non-effective logistician. I'll leave that at that. On the topic of this relationship, I believe this is the thing to do. Rather than wait for the big Army decision that this may be formalized, I would say go to the doggone FA 49 course. It's 14 weeks. It's tough from what I hear, mathematically. First week is incredibly tough. The barriers you're going to have are probably in justifying it to people why you should go, because someone's got to pay, right? And the answer to that would be, I would say, especially if, who are we talking about here? We're talking about captains. We're talking definitely about warrant officers. And so we're, at least with these folks, we're probably talking about some majors. It's never too late. You know, if I could go to this, I could figure out how to go, I would certainly go. And the value proposition, I would say, is, hey, do you want a logistics or supply chain or maintenance or whatever engineer working at higher levels than tactical, like operational, setting the theater, strategic, cost savings in the industrial base? Do you want a logistics engineer in those jobs? Or do you want someone who's given their best guess? Now, I'm not meaning to take away anything from anyone out there. I've been giving my best guess for a very long time. The question is that the best that we can do? So ask yourself that question. Integrate, not infiltrate. See if you can find a way to get to one of these courses. Don't believe the haters. Don't listen to the haters. People who tell you you can't go or you shouldn't go. Find a way to get somebody to send you and pay, and then bring the value back to the force if you can affect it. If you can't, at least think about it. And think about maybe what you're missing and what we're missing by not having a more formal, sustained relationship in these areas. That's it for this thought, but you tell us what you think.